So I graduated culinary school in 1998. Still just as handsome today. That was a joke. I had one goal. I wanted to be an executive chef and I wanted to own my own restaurant. And about 10 years later, I had that opportunity. I bought into a restaurant in uptown area of Dallas. And within my first year of ownership, I was nominated as best up-and-coming chef, and I grew our business 38%. So I was already exceeding my goals and expectations. In that same year, I taught 8 young men inside one of the Dallas County juvenile detention facilities how to make ice cream for an ice cream competition at the Dallas Farmers Market. The moment I met those 8 young men, I realized I had stereotyped them before I had ever met them. The way they walk, the way they talk, hood, thug, gangsta. I knew I was wrong because all 8 of them looked me in the eye and all 8 of them called me sir. Now I've been cooking for 20 years. I've been called a lot of names in a lot of languages, in a lot of kitchens. It was never sir. If I was lucky, it was chef without an adjective in front of it. They were so eager to learn and so enthusiastic to do something. They threw themselves into making ice cream. And just for context, for all 8 of them, raspberry was a flavor of candy. They had never seen or tasted a fresh raspberry. So you can imagine the looks on their faces when I tried to get them to eat fresh tarragon. They thought I was feeding them grass. So we made ice cream, and 2 days later, the county bussed them down to the farmer's market, and they competed against college culinary students. And at the end of the competition, one of the young men actually won the whole thing. And when he won, he came running up to me, knees bent, arms cocked, screaming in my face at the top of his lungs, "Sir, I just love to cook!" And I bent my knees, cocked my arms, and screamed right back at him, "Sir, me too!" And he said, "I just love to make food and give it to people and put a smile on their face." And he told me when he got out, he was gonna get a job in a restaurant and asked my professional opinion on whether he should work at Wendy's or Chili's. And I professionally told him, whoever hires you first. And I drove home that day and I knew 2 things. I knew, number 1, I was never gonna see him again. He was a child under custody of the Dallas County Juvenile Department. They're not gonna give me his personal information. I'm a stranger. I also knew that the odds of him ever making it to a Wendy's or Chili's were somewhere between slim and none. Because at the end of the day, he's gonna go right back to the same house, the same street, the same neighborhood, the same gangs, the same poverty, the same school, the same issues that had pushed him into detention. And I thought, it's not fair. And somebody needs to do something. And thus the idea for Café Momentum was born. Café Momentum is a 12-month paid post-release internship for young men and young ladies exiting Dallas County juvenile detention facilities. Over the course of those 12 months, they work their way through all of the stations in the restaurant. In no particular order, they're a dishwasher, prep cook, line cook, busser, server, and host or hostess. While they're working their way through those stations, they're focused on learning and practicing life skills and social skills. Things like look someone in the eye when you speak to them, disagree appropriately, showing up for work on time. In addition, we have a case management team that works to build an ecosystem of support. So they're simultaneously working to address urgent issues initially, like housing. Why is that important? 62% of the nearly 300 kids we've worked with since the restaurant opened are homeless. If you're 15, 16 years old and you're homeless, that typically means you've also been abandoned. We help them with health care, getting a government-issued ID, creating stabilization and moving on to more intermediate things like getting them back in school and on track to graduate, financial literacy training, parenting classes, holistically addressing all of the issues that have plagued them up to this point in their lives. Now, I think all of this sounds awesome, and I would go around telling people, hey, I need $250,000. I'm opening a nonprofit restaurant, and would explain the concept. And the first thing that people would say is, well, aren't all restaurants nonprofit? And yes. So at least they knew I was honest. And then they'd say things like, what are you gonna do when those kids stab each other in the kitchen? Those kids don't wanna work, they just wanna collect a check. They've never been to a nice restaurant. They can't explain your menu. And I realized that the stereotypes were even more pervasive than I had thought. So in 2011, June 2011, we launched a series of pop-up dinners. And the idea was very simple. Go into one of the top restaurants in Dallas on a Sunday night when they're closed, sell tickets to a private dinner, have the chef write a 4-course menu, and then his or her staff to not only execute the food in the kitchen, but serve it to the level and quality of service of that restaurant. were 8 kids that we would bus in from one of the juvenile detention facilities. That first dinner, our goal was to get 50 people to pay $50. We had no hope that anybody would show up. 2 of us posted a link to a PayPal to buy tickets on our personal Facebook pages, and within 24 hours before we could turn the PayPal off, we had sold 68 seats. And that first dinner, 68 people, when they left, either shook my hand or gave me a hug and said, you know, this could be my son. We went on. By December of 2011, we doubled the price from $50 to $100. We also no longer made it BYOB for various reasons. And the dinner sold out in 15 minutes. And by spring of 2012, the dinners were selling out in 15 seconds. In the summer of 2012, I told my business partner that I needed to put skin in the game and I needed to walk the talk. It was one thing to tell the kids that I believed in them. It was another thing to prove it. So effective September 1st, 2012, I sold my ownership in my restaurant and bet my career on taking kids out of jail and teaching them to play with knives and fire. Solid advice. Café Momentum opened January 29th, 2015. By March of 2015, Dallas Morning News food critic Leslie Brenner visited us. For those of you that are not from Dallas, and maybe some that are, Leslie has a reputation, not just here in Dallas, but nationally. That reputation is very simply that she hates every restaurant that she goes to review. So you can imagine that Leslie did not review us as a charity. She did not review us as a nonprofit. She did not review us as a cause. She reviewed us as a restaurant. And in her review, she wrote that on any given night, our restaurant can go toe-to-toe with the best restaurants in the city. By fall of 2015, the Dallas Observer named us Best New Restaurant, and Eater Dallas named us Restaurant of the Year. And today, as I stand in front of you, Eater has us ranked as the 3rd best restaurant in the city. Now, these are all wonderful accolades, but they tell a much deeper story because our mission extends beyond the 4 walls of the restaurant. From first pop-up dinner to date, we've worked with nearly 500 kids. About 500 kids. Of those 500 kids, statistically speaking, 48% of them should have gone back to jail within 12 months. Of the 500 kids, only 15% have ever gone back to jail at all, which leads me to one of my favorite things that I like to say, and I just said this to him 2 days ago. Dallas Mayor Mike Rawlings owes me a check for $19.8 million because that's how much money we've saved taxpayers. But our mission statement clearly states to help them achieve their full potential, which is a far cry from just keeping them out of jail. So I want to tell you the story of Abasai, who was part of our very first graduating class. Abasai is a son of Mexican immigrants. They crossed the border, got jobs, got married, started a family, got divorced. That meant that Abasai went from living in a bad neighborhood to a really bad neighborhood. We went from living in poverty to higher poverty. Didn't want to ask his mom for things that she would complain his dad should provide. Didn't want to ask his dad for things that he would complain his mom should provide. So he turned to the streets to accumulate the resources, i.e. money, needed to take care of those things: food, clothing, school supplies. He ended up getting in trouble, went through our program. Upon graduating our program, he got a job with one of our employment partners. And within 3 months, at 17 years old, he was making between $700 and $1,000 a week with full health benefits, paid vacation, and a 401k. In January of last year, I got to watch Abasai walk across stage as the first ever high school graduate of his family. And today, he's in his 2nd semester at Richland College, where he plans on transferring to a 4-year university and majoring in mechanical engineering. Now that excites us so much because it completely changes the narrative. Because the story is no longer about Abasai. It's about his children, his grandchildren, their children. That excites us so much that we actually did a study and looked at, if we're working with 100 kids a year, what does that look like across 5 generations? Very simple. 100 kids a year affects over 2,500 lives across 5 generations. And when you take the amount of money you save from keeping that initial generation out of prison, and add to it the amount of money that future generations continue to pump back into their own community, the total is over $389 million. $389 million equals 389 Café Momentums, and that is why we call it Momentum. Thank you.